Good morning, everyone. It is 6 a.m. Arizona time. That is the clock on my wall, and I want to say welcome to today's webinar. We are going to be continuing in our webinar series on Analyze DI Explained. Today, we're going to be talking about victim ID workflows and how basically to use Griffeye Analyze in a victim ID-centric workflow so that you guys can be more efficient at not only doing your job, but helping rescue children. I mean, that's why we are using this tool is to combat child exploitation and those types of offenses. And for many, many years, the ICAC or Internet Crimes Against Children units existed, but there really wasn't this ethos of let's rescue victims first and foremost. It was I started in 2001 as an investigator doing internet crimes against children in Arizona. And it wasn't until 2011 when I came across some folks with Project Vic, and they explained to me in so many terms that basically I was doing my investigations wrong. I was taking an approach that was offender-based, and it was all about focusing on catching these bad guys, which is a great thing. I mean, don't get me wrong, and it feels good to put these offenders away, and Arizona's got really strict sentencing guidelines, so it's excellent. But we really didn't focus our efforts specifically on victims. Of course, we had investigations where we were able to rescue victims and find them, but it wasn't really our focus. So in 2011, some colleagues of mine and I, we attended a conference in Dallas, and we met some folks at a company called NetClean, which is now Griffeye Analyze, and we learned about this tool. And then in 2012, we were introduced to something called Project Vic, which is basically it is bringing law enforcement, non-governmental organizations, and private sector together so that we can help combat this horrible thing that is happening in the world. And they taught us about taking a victim-centric approach. So what we're going to talk about today in our webinar, if I can get this to work correctly, we're going to talk about basically what is victim ID, setting up a victim victim ID environment in your cases, using our tool, things within the tool we'll talk about as well to help you be better at doing these, finding this information that's going to help identify victims. And then and we'll also talk about how we can use face detection and some other technologies within the tool to be better at it. Now, there's something that we call the victim ID checklist, and this is the checklist, and it's basically all about first generation material. So when you hear me say first generation material, I'm talking about material that has not been seen or investigated before by anybody else. That is where you're going to be doing your victim ID stuff. So this checklist kind of gets you in the mindset of what you should be doing if you're taking a victim-centric approach. Now, I will say this, I am not a victim ID specialist. This webinar is not about being a victim ID specialist. It's about taking that victim ID approach to your investigations. I believe that everybody can be a victim identification officer, and I was a victim identification officer when I was introduced to that type of thinking. The analogy I like to use is everybody in this field doing this work is a police officer. A lot of you guys are detectives. Some of you may be with a federal agency that just started, but in the police world, you're a police officer. Homicide detectives don't just answer the radio when there's a homicide. There's patrol officers that answer the radio call, find out what's going on, and then when they need the heavy hitters, they call them in. I believe we're the same way. You guys can be the patrol officers of child exploitation investigations, where you can look for all the clues and signs of the ability to identify and rescue a victim. And then you can bring in those specialists. You can call in the heavy hitters to really help you dig down and find things. So I'm not going to talk about how to, notice from one photograph that this, bag of pretzels came from Canada and things like. That's not what this is about. This is about setting up your environment so that when you're doing your standard day-to-day investigations, you are taking that victim-centric mindset. So a couple things in this checklist is, first and foremost, we want you guys to photograph the background of suspects' residence. If you guys aren't taking photographs of your search warrants, which I would imagine you guys are, you have photographs of the residence where, think about it, if the offender is going to be producing first generation material, they're probably going to be doing it in their residence. And you now, because you've done a search warrant on their residence, obviously you have their evidence, that's why you're doing this investigation. Because you've done that search warrant, you now have photographs of inside the house that we can then check these images against images we seized in our investigation to see if there's any first generation stuff going on. And we're going to do that here in a minute. We can also search for any images taken by cameras found in the suspect's possession. Guys, if you are not seizing cameras on your search warrants, no matter what camera type they are, or if they have memory or storage or whatever, you guys should still be seizing them because you want to be able to match them up with the files that you find within your case. Nobody wants to go back 6 months later and say, hey man, remember that camera? Well, we did a search warrant here, ruined your life. Remember, can we just grab that camera real quick that we forgot about because we noticed you took pictures with it? That's just not going to fly. So, but it's important, grab those cameras and then we can take that information and we can look for that data within our suspects' data sets. We also want to look for images with any GPS data, and we're going to show you how to do that within the tool. And basically EXIF data for dates and times, if you have a time range, things like that. We also want to review images with large file sizes first. And the reason that is because when people are producing their own pictures, if you take a photograph with your cell phone, even the cheap cell phones are taking something that, larger than 4 megapixels. But once you upload that data to the internet, now it's going to reduce that file size and shrink. Or if you're looking at images that have been downloaded from the internet, typically they are smaller file sizes as well. So we want to really take a look for those large images first. And then we also want to review any images for known faces using our face detection algorithm that we have built into Analyze DI. And also we want to talk a little bit about using our camera forensics, which is an add-on that we have with Analyze DI Pro that's going to help match cameras that took imagery within your bad guys evidence up to a public website that holds that information in a database. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. What I first want to talk about is filters. Excuse me, let me clear my filters. That would be a good idea. Okay, so first and foremost, we have filters available for us in Analyze DI that are going to allow us to look for things that are related to EXIF. So EXIF information is that information embedded within files, and this is really going to be helpful for us in that victim-centric approach that we take, because we'll be able to match any data with the information that we have embedded or in the EXIF info. So over on our filters panel on our right-hand side, actually, you know what? Let me back up. I completely forgot to go over one thing. Before you sit down in front of your in front of your cases, one of the most important things to do is to set up that victim identification environment so you're ready to really focus on victim ID, is setting up your intelligence databases to maximize the amount of pre-identified files that you can categorize. So basically, let's have the tool identify as many files that have been seen before up on the internet, so that we don't have to waste our time doing redundant work and reviewing files that someone else has already investigated. So the reason I say we want to set up these intelligence databases with fingerprints and hashes of known files is because the more intelligence we have, the more files we're going to pre-categorize and pre-identify, so we have less files we actually have to go through and take that victim-centric approach. So this is just kind of an example. I've got my local GID here set up with hashes from Project Vic. And if you haven't seen Project Vic before, haven't been exposed to it, Project Vic is basically, you can get to it at projectvic.org. What it means to you is it is a hash set or a set of hashes of known files that have been investigated. It's a curated hash set that you can load into your tool, and then any tool that you have. It doesn't have to be Griffeye Analyze. Project Vic is vendor agnostic, but you can load it into Griffeye Analyze, and it will match all your files against those hashes to see if they have been seen before. If you want to get a hold of the Project Vic hashes, the way to do that is to visit icatcops.com/users and go to the Project Vic subsection, and you can apply for a certificate right here to download that. And there's more information again at projectvic.org, or you can go to icatcops.com/users if you have an account, and you can set up. There's a lot more information in here. Now, you'll see I have my Project Vic sources set up. This is going to help me, obviously, take those files that are just irrelevant to my investigation, plus ones that have been investigated before, and it's going to identify those for me. I also have in here the NSRL, which, if you're not familiar with that is, that is the National Software Reference Library, available at nist.gov, and you can get a hold of this. This is, again, the RDS set is known images of, it's basically files that are part of operating systems that are known to be out there, including Android and iOS and modern computer systems. So as you can see, it's all about building up this database so that when I process my case, it's going to pre-identify all the files that have been seen before. So as you can see in this example investigation, this case has 5,700 roughly files in it. And there's only 1,162 files that are uncategorized, meaning that every other file in this case has been seen or investigated before. So I don't have to worry about taking that or looking into those files beyond just making sure that they're chargeable and things like that. Because your victims are all going to live in that uncategorized area. Because remember, we're talking about first generation material that's going to get us to figure out where these people are or where that victim potentially is. So we have our database is populated with as much hash intelligence as possible. And remember, we also have the ability now to add a remote GID connection. So we can actually connect to anybody in the world to increase the amount of intelligence we have that we're checking our cases against while we're processing them. So that is absolute first and foremost, is to set up that environment so that you're pre-identifying as many files as possible. The second victim ID setup that I think you guys should consider is to just have that mindset that this person is a producer. There is first generation material on his data or in his data set until I prove otherwise. So I always like to take that mindset where until the data shows me otherwise, I'm going to assume that this person is a first generation producer. And that's obviously because I always use the analogy when I would interview someone, I'd say, hey, if you looked at my computer and you saw, that I was visiting websites that had to do with Ford Mustangs, classic Ford Mustangs, and I was in forums about classic Ford Mustangs. I had millions of pictures on my computer that were Ford Mustangs. Would it surprise you to open my garage and find an actual Ford Mustang? So I think given the right set of circumstances, a lot of these offenders are very opportunistic, and they will create this and memorialize it and things like that. So it's something to be aware of. Get that mindset that these people are producing. Yeah, you're easily going to be able to find your chargeable files by just visiting the stuff that had been, tagged or pre-categorized. But your uncategorized area is where you're going to have all your victims. So that is where you're really going to want to focus most of your efforts. But getting that set up so that you really can get more intelligence, intelligence about your data before you even sit down in front of it. But it's that mindset. So now once you have that, you have that mindset and you're sitting down and you're going through your investigation, what you can do is, one of the first things is, like we said, we want you to photograph all the, photograph the crime scene of your search warrant and seize those cameras that you find on scene. And then what you can do is you can use our EXIF filters over here to basically expand out and find out whether camera make, camera model, whatever. We'll say we found a 1+ camera on scene or camera model. You can zoom down to that and say, okay, where is the There it is. I can zoom down to the specific model of a camera I found. I could find the exact photographs that were taken in that area. That's one quick way to use your filters. Also, remember we talked about using large file sizes, or looking at large file sizes first. We can go down here and we can filter down to file size, but we also have this picture video width as well. So I say, hey, I want to look at all these high resolution images that are 4,000 pixels plus. Remember, that's going to be that stuff that your offender is probably taking or probably producing themselves. So over here, and then remember in our EXIF filters also, we have that ability. If you have a date range, we can go over to this date EXIF create date range, which is what kind of a cool tool. Now this is all, again, these are all filters related to EXIF information that is embedded within files. And EXIF information is going to describe what device took that image. But I can use this date filter if I have a date range that I can use, and I can kind of go through and I can customize exactly what date range I'm looking for. If I have a victim who has said something happened between this time or that time, I can certainly use that as well. Also, if you have a camera that has a serial number, so let's say you have a DSLR camera, or someone is taking imagery that is, using a fancy camera, the DSLRs or the nicer ones, they will embed serial numbers in imagery. So you can actually go down here and say, hey, I want to look at all the images that have a serial number. Assuming you found one on scene that has a serial number, you can quickly narrow down and say, just show me the images that have a serial number. And you can focus on those if you want to. One of the other cool things too is that if you have or one of the cool things that our tool does, that if you have an image that is of importance to you, you can, or you just find it organically. You're going through your investigation and you find an image organically, you can right click and say filter on files in the same folder as the selected file. So once you locate a target image, you can say, boom, show me all the rest of the stuff that was in the same folder with that file. Now, if you have imagery that is, if you locate imagery that is dark or hard to discern what's going on with in our tool, what you can do is we can use our shadow boost function, and that is something a lot of people aren't aware of. So let's say this is an image and I'm trying to figure out maybe where this was taken, or who is in this picture. This is kind of a dark image, I can't really tell, but I can use our shadow boost, which is right here above the in the file view. Again, I have selected this image, open it up in the file view, and now I have this shadow boost button, and if I select that, it's going to try to bring out any of the details in the photograph, and now I could potentially identify this hat logo, or maybe this shirt logo, or maybe something else, but I also now can identify these people. Now, victim ID is, well, I should say one of the company's old slogans was look beyond what you can see. And that's what victim ID is all about, is looking beyond what just jumps out at you. So just looking beyond this dark image, I can use tools like Shadow Boost to see more detail in that photograph. But beyond that, there's also more information. I can see that there's GPS information embedded in this file, and I can use the built-in mapping to show me exactly where that image was taken. And that is just image that is in, or that is just data embedded into your image. So under your EXIF filters, we have EXIF. We can see these two other options, files with GPS data and EXIF thumbnail mismatches. So if you want to take a look, or you wanted to see where a particular image was taken, you can see right here that this icon indicates there is a GPS embedded. So I can simply select that file or click on that map, and it brings it up and shows me exactly where that picture was taken in the mapping function within our tool. So that's something that's very important that you can use as well, is use that mapping to really zero in on any files that were taken within your jurisdiction or whatnot. Now, I will tell you that, we say look beyond what you can see. That is obviously something you want to do as an investigator, not just take, oh, this image is too dark, I can't figure out what it is. Why not take a look at it, use our shadow boost. And now when I boost this image, you can see if it's unboosted, it's really hard to tell any detail about this photograph. But if I click this button right here, it's going to bring out a lot of detail in the background. And now I can call in the heavy hitters and say, hey, listen, this image looks like it was taken in a hotel room. You know, can you tell me, you know, maybe what type of hotel this is? That's really when you're going to take it to the next level, when you're going to bring in the super specialist. But your job, just like that patrol officer out in the field, your job is to assess and see what can be passed on to the detectives. So we also spoke about using your crime scene photos, or taking images of the suspect's residence when you conduct a search warrant. So Analyze DI has a function in there in our search panel called, it's basically called doing an external image search. And it's going to allow us to run a similarity search with an external file. So I can go over here to this search and go up to image, and my search methods is set to similarity search because I want to look for similar files to the images that I took in my search warrant, because you're going to have images of bedrooms and bathrooms anywhere in the house where they would probably be taking those photographs. So I'm going to select this add button, and I'm going to bring in my crime scene photos. Where am I? Oh, there it is. I'm going to bring in these crime scene photos that I took as a part of my investigation. And I can bring in more than one image at a time. I'll just bring in a couple of these for an example. Wait, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong case here. I'm gonna switch to this case for that one, sorry. I'll bring in a couple of these and hit open. Now what this is doing is this is bringing the external into it's bringing the external image into Analyze. It's not adding it to my case, but it's just running that similarity search to see if there's images that look similar to it. As you can see, this image right here of this bedroom, I ran that external image similarity, and you can see I've already identified a couple of images of the potential victims that we have. And then one thing also that you want to do when you're looking at any of these pictures or images of possible suspects is to take a look at things in the background. Look beyond what the subject matter of the photograph, being the girl, and look for clues that might indicate where that picture was potentially taken. Again, you don't have to dig down all the way into this and go down some crazy rabbit hole, but if you can get some information about where it basically was, then you can pass that on to your victim ID specialists, and they can really take that to the next level. And then you can also select any other photos as well. You can see this crime scene photo took one here, matched there as well. Again, that's just bringing in these external crime scene photos and matching it with files within your case. Super important, and something that we would do on all our investigations prior to my retirement. All right, the other thing I talked about was we talked about bringing in faces. So if you have, we have face detection built into this tool. And again, this is your face detection, as well as camera forensics, which I mentioned earlier, is all part of the Analyze Forensic market. It is, if you have the pro version of the tool, face detection is right within here. You just have to activate it in that market. But what we can do is, I recommend, if you are on a search warrant, you're out on a scene doing whatever, take images or take pictures of any possible suspects and possible victims that you might have that may show up in your evidence. And then you can take those photos and you can quickly have the tool show you all the locations in that case where that face appears. So I can simply go over to my search tab, and under search methods, I want to make sure I change this to similar faces. And I click that add button. And just like bringing in those crime scene photos, I can bring in a face and see if I can match that face to any images within my case. So I took a picture of this lovely young lady, my daughter, and I'm going to click the open button here and see. Now you can see I took this external face picture, and it actually found the exact photograph in there, and then even more images of her with other people And then I could run subsequent searches as well using face detection. I could say, hey, who is this person right here I want to identify? I can use the face detection button as well. I can say, show me more of that face, and I can expose even more images and identify even more people and make those connections that way. Now, one cool thing that we can do is we can use two of our functions together to kind of help us find more and more files of people that are related. And the way we could do that is we can go to, I'll show you, we can use our visual similarity searching, which is I just kind of showed you how that works externally, but you can also do it internal to your tool. So let's say we find this image of this young boy on a skateboard. I can run a similarity search by just hitting enter, and that's going to bring back any similar images of that one I found. Now, using my similarity search, I identified there's another file right here that appears to be the same boy, and I can right click here and say search similar faces, and it'll bring back all the similar faces to that image that I just ran a scan on from within the case. You don't have to bring an external image, and you can also run it from within the tool. And now you can see I've exposed other images of this boy in other settings that I can then use, and I can interrogate those images even better. So it's kind of taking similarity searching and face detection together to really find all those people, or excuse me, all those related images. Now, talking about GPS data, again, you can also quickly, when you start your investigation, one of the coolest things you can do in this tool without filtering anything, you just sit down in front of the case and you can just go over to, you can go up to your view tab and make sure your map is turned on, and that's going to expose for you the location data from all the images that have that embedded in there, and you can quickly zoom in on any jurisdictions that you're interested in, so you can really focus on the people in your jurisdiction. Okay, now let's talk about one other thing really quickly, and then we'll talk about camera forensics. And that is our EXIF thumbnail mismatch. If you find somebody, an offender who has created some exploitation, and they have obfuscated the file, they've blurred it, they've changed it in some way, like this image right here, our tool will identify for you with a thumbnail header icon up here with the little red square indicating that the thumbnail, the embedded EXIF thumbnail, does not match the main image, and I can select this and open it up and quickly expose that embedded thumbnail, showing that I can actually now take this image and I can run face detection. I can perform other functions on it. Before, I would not be able to identify who this was, but because I exposed that EXIF thumbnail, now I can take a look. Similarly, in this image right here, it's been pixelated, but I can check out the embedded thumbnails and actually see more detailed information and then add those files back to the case if need be. So it's, if you come across images, again, that have let me go back to this, sorry, that have any type of obfuscation or something like that, it's a good idea to check that embedded thumbnail to see if that was also edited or changed, or you can get some ID on it. But you can expose all these images that have these EXIF thumbnail mismatches quickly with a filter under our EXIF filters right next to files with GPS data. You can say, just show me all the images where that embedded EXIF thumbnail doesn't quite match, or show me all the images that have GPS data as well. And you'll see each one of these, the thumbnail header icon has become a little map, and it shows me exactly where that image was taken. This one was taken in Japan. So that's kind of an idea to zero in on where that had been taken from. Now, one other thing that I would like to talk about that is, again, part of our tool set in the analyzed forensic market is camera forensics. Now, camera forensics, really quickly, is a website that scrapes the public internet for imagery that has been uploaded that does still contain EXIF information. Most social media sites and things like that, when you upload, they're going to strip all that EXIF information from your, from the pictures or videos that you've uploaded. But some websites do not strip them, and camera forensics basically crawls the public internet and keeps all that data in a public database. If you purchase Analyze DI Pro, it comes with the camera forensics license. Although if you have our free version, you can also edit it if you have an existing camera forensics license. So let's take a look at how it works within our tool. We have in our filters panel under apps, we have this camera forensics now. And camera forensics is going to, what it does is as you process your case, it checks all the files with EXIF information. It passes them up to camera forensics, and it checks to see all the files that have matched or have been seen, or the EXIF information has been identified up on the public internet from all these images, meaning they've been uploaded somewhere. And you can see from the thumbnail header icons, there's a little orange icon indicating that there is a camera forensics match right there. Now I have bookmarked one file that I want to look at. So let's say we find, this image, and it is important to us, and we think this may be a possible victim in our investigation. I can see that this image, I can't really, there is, face detection isn't going to work on this because her face is at too hard of an angle there for it to pick it up. But I've noticed that when I looked at this, that there's a match on camera forensics indicating that someone has taken this or using this camera has uploaded information to the public internet. So when I click on that little thumbnail header icon, it pops up brings me up to cameraforensics.com. And it's going to run a search. Basically, it passed all that EXIF information up, and it says, hey, we found one camera with one sighting, so let's take a look. There's the image that I saw, and it says there are 10 other images taken with this exact camera, because it is read that this was taken with a Canon EOS 6D, and that's the serial number. So I can quickly go over here and hit those filters and look at all the other imagery that was taken with that same camera. And as you can see now, I have several other images. I'm going to switch this from the gallery view to my list view. And you can see I have several other images, some of which I can actually make an identification on now. And this now, I could actually save this image and then bring it back into Analyze DI using that external face search. And I can bring that in and find all the other images that have the same person in them. So this is kind of a way of matching that information, just EXIF data that was found in your suspect data set with intelligence that has been, or websites that have been uploaded to the public internet. And now when I view the, I can go and I can view the actual file. Not only do I have the image now, but I also have a user account that I can associate all this with. So it's kind of a way of connecting up the dots to get you exactly where you want, and match that website data or that internet data with files that you have locally within your case. So again, guys, it's all about taking that victim-centric mindset and that workflow where you're really going through and taking a look at the images that no one has seen before, first and foremost. Again, that's going to be in your uncategorized files. And then taking that mindset that if you see something that's out of the ordinary or doesn't seem to fit or needs some type of identification, you can dig deeper down into those files using your filters. Remember, those EXIF filters are super important. Camera make, camera model, serial number. We also have locations where you can zoom down into, it'll give you kind of a human readable location. There's also another app we have that's kind of related to if you're going to be taking that victim-centric approach and you want to see what's going on and connecting up intelligence, we also have our social media identifier as well that's going to help you locate those files that may have potentially been downloaded from a public website, such as Facebook, Flickr, some of these other ones. And that's really going to help you quickly zero in, find those files, and then you can go in and you can perform whatever functions you want, do the face detection, things like that, to really increase the ability for you to find that information. But again, it's all about mindset. It's all about sitting down in front of your investigation with that thought, hey, this person is a producer until the data shows otherwise. I'm going to take that mindset. And then looking beyond what you see in your just in the imagery right here. For example, this image, if I don't know where this is, I can, look beyond the subject matter of that image. I can use my little magnifying tool and I can kind of zoom in or figure out maybe who sells this, where is this? Looks like some kind of a hardware store. You can figure all that stuff out. It's about mindset. Don't just look at this picture and say, oh, there's another image of her. There's another image of him. There's another, really start looking beyond that subject matter of the photo. So it's about taking that victim-centric approach by thinking, first set it up. You want to have all your intelligence populated so that you are going to maximize the amount of pre-categorized files you don't have to worry about. Really get those set up really with as much intelligence as you possibly can. And then when you sit down in front of your case, having that mindset that I think this guy's a producer. That is what it's all about, and just taking another look. I will tell you that, these investigations are huge. I mean, I don't have to tell you guys that, you're looking at hundreds of thousands or millions of images and videos you have to go through in each investigation. And there's nothing that wipes away the drudgery of going through and sifting through hundreds of thousands of images like actually locating first-generation material, finding it, and helping further rescuing that child. It really, really makes the job worthwhile. If you haven't had the chance to be a part of an investigation where you actually rescue live victims, when you do, you'll see exactly how it feels. It's actually quite nice. So our tool, it has lots of little features built into it so that you can really focus down on identifying victims, as I just showed you. So I highly recommend that you take a look at it and really start to get that mindset of, hey, this person is a producer. All right. Any questions about anything I've covered today in this webinar? If we don't have any questions, let's take a look. All right. Excellent. Very good. Well, let me just say thank you very much for joining today's webinar. Hopefully you got some good information about how to take that victim-centric approach when you are conducting your investigations. And please keep an eye out on the website for any upcoming webinars. Also, we've got a lot of really cool updates in the software. Our developers have been working really hard over the last 6 months. Actually, they've been working hard for the last 10 years, but they've been really making a lot of improvements based on what you guys give us as feedback. So it's super important that we get feedback from you. You can contact me directly if you want. Let's see. You can contact me directly if you want, and I can point you in the right direction. So please feel free to get a hold of me if you have any feature requests, anything that will help you be better at identifying children in your investigations. Please don't hesitate to let us know. We can add it in. We can get it built in so that we can make you guys more efficient at what you do. All right. Thank you guys very much, and you have a wonderful rest of your day.